My name is Ethan. I'm 48 years old. For 14 of those years, I lived inside a house that wasn't mine. Not legally, not emotionally. A house outside Milwaukee that I bought, fixed, mowed, wired, and heated, but that never belonged to me. Because the people inside it made sure I knew I didn't belong. I met Rachel at a hardware store. She needed help lifting a sack of concrete. I offered, she smiled. It was ordinary. She was raising 2 kids alone back then. Her ex had left town a year earlier. No alimony. No contact. She liked to say she was starting over. I believed her. She told me she didn't want anything serious, that marriage ruined things. I thought that was just armor. That time would wear her down gently, like water shaping stone. So I waited, and I gave, and I stayed. 14 years later, I was still waiting, and still giving. That night, the party wasn't supposed to mean anything. Just one of those semi-formal office gatherings where people stand around in semi-iron shirts pretending they don't hate each other. I only went because Rachel asked, said it would look good if I showed up. I said sure. That's what I always said. Sure. No problem. Happy to help. She wore black. That dress with the slit on the side she hadn't worn in years. Her hair was different, curled. I noticed. She didn't comment. I drove us there and parked a block away so she wouldn't have to walk in heels. She didn't say thank you. Inside, the office had been turned into something else. Music played low, classy, the kind that makes people feel richer than they are. There was a long table of catered food, things that looked like food but tasted like formality. Glasses clinked. Small talk sparkled. The kind of atmosphere where everyone is both performing and pretending not to. I made my way behind the bar. Rachel disappeared. Someone called her name and she vanished into a circle of laughter and high heels. I stood behind the bar with a ginger ale and tried not to look like the outsider I was. I'm good at that. At disappearing in plain sight. That's when I saw her. Rachel. In the far corner. Her back against the drywall, one hand on Derek's chest. His hand on her waist. Their mouths pressed together like it was a habit. My best friend. Derek. He used to help me retile the bathroom. He was the one who gave me advice when Rachel's son first started pushing back. Telling me not to take it personally. Teens are rough, he'd said. Just keep showing up. Now he was kissing her like he'd been waiting his turn. I froze. My first instinct wasn't rage. It was confusion. Like I'd misunderstood the context. But no, there was no room for misunderstanding. It was slow. Intentional. Familiar. I looked to the right. Tina, Derek's wife, stood 10 feet away, holding a glass of white wine. I expected to see devastation on her face. Anger. A tear. Something. But she just sipped her drink, caught my eye, and said, calm as wind over still water. Don't make a scene. Just watch. She knew. Of course she knew. This wasn't an accident. This was theater. A carefully timed reveal. A private tragedy served in a room full of noise. And we were the audience. The other halves. The props. I felt cold. Not angry. Cold. Like something inside me had been pulled out without anesthesia. I stood there for a long time holding that glass of ginger ale. Watching. No one else saw. Or maybe they did and pretended not to. That's how these things go. People choose silence when truth gets messy. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't shout. Didn't make a scene. I stood behind the bar and filled drinks and nodded at people I didn't know while the woman I'd loved kissed the man who used to call me brother. It's strange. How quickly a life can unravel in your hands without making a sound. We left quietly. I offered to drive. She said sure. She was glowing, like someone had come back from a spa. I didn't ask where she'd gone during the party. She didn't offer. In the car, she hummed something. A tune I didn't know. I drove like my limbs weren't mine. When we got home, she went straight to bed. I stayed in the garage, stared at the tools hanging on the pegboard. Everything neatly arranged. Everything in place. Like a life that had been built and maintained by a man who thought order could protect him from betrayal. We weren't married. I'd asked twice. Once during a Christmas trip to Door County. I had the ring and everything. She smiled and said no. Marriage would ruin it, she said. Let's not mess up a good thing. So I stopped asking. Figured the years would count for something. That maybe, after a decade of bills and birthdays and quiet loyalty, she'd see what I was made of. Instead, she saw how much I could endure and decided to push a little harder. I paid the mortgage. It was in my name. She didn't want the paperwork stress. I understood. I paid the utilities, the insurance, the groceries. I handled car repairs, snow removal, lawn care, the cracked foundation in year 6, the roof leak in year 9. I handled everything. Her son, Mason, was 9 when I met him. Her daughter, Ellie, was 6. The first time I took them out was to a Brewers game. Mason spent the whole time complaining that it wasn't football. Ellie cried when we ran out of popcorn. They never called me Dad. Just Ethan. Always Ethan. I told myself I didn't need a title. That love wasn't about labels. That if I stayed consistent, if I kept showing up, they'd learn what it meant to be cared for. I taught Mason how to drive. He failed his first test. I didn't yell. I took him back 2 weeks later and paid for the second attempt. I helped Ellie with her math homework for 3 years straight, even when I didn't understand the questions. When she got into a fender bender, it was my insurance that took the hit. Not a single word of thanks. Not once. But I kept giving. Not out of pride. Not out of duty. I gave because I thought love was currency, and that eventually, if you spent enough, you'd be repaid in kind. I was wrong. In that house, I was a fixture. Like a chair. Like the old bookshelf no one dusts. Necessary but invisible. Rachel never corrected them. When they rolled their eyes at me, when they said, "He's not my dad," she would smile, awkwardly. Change the subject. Once, when I asked her why she never defended me, she shrugged and said, "They're teenagers. Don't take it so hard." But it wasn't just teenage stuff. It was deeper. A quiet campaign to erase me inch by inch. And I allowed it. For 14 years I allowed it. Because I thought devotion was its own reward. Because I thought being the one who stayed meant something. Because I thought love, even unacknowledged, was sacred. Until that night, that party, that kiss. Until I stood behind a bar with a glass of ginger ale and watched my partner kiss my best friend while his wife told me to shut up and observe. And I did. I watched. I let the betrayal soak into my bones. And I didn't say a word. There's a difference between being hated and being nothing. Hate still means you matter. It means you take up space in someone's mind. But when you're nothing, truly nothing, they don't even flinch when they step over you. That was what I became in my own house. A shadow. A mute. A fixture in the background that made the lights work and the fridge hum. But not a man. Not a father. Not even a presence. Just scaffolding for other people's comfort. After the party, I didn't bring it up. Didn't ask Rachel about the kiss. Didn't mention Derek. I just watched. And waited. I wanted to see if she'd acknowledge it on her own. Maybe even apologize. She didn't. 3 days passed. She made coffee like always. Paid half her attention to her phone and the rest to the kids. Mason needed a ride to SAT prep. Ellie needed help finishing a presentation. Rachel had to stop by the office. Just for a bit. Could I handle dinner? Of course I could. I always could. Mason dropped his laptop on the driveway that week. He left it on top of the car, forgot, and drove off. I found it 2 blocks down, shattered. He stormed into the kitchen, blaming the world. Said he needed a new one now. Rachel looked at me. Just a glance. Not a question. Not a request. Just that look that said, "You know what to do." So I did. I ordered a new one. Paid for express shipping. Not even a thank you. A week later, Ellie complained her car's check engine light was on. I took it in after work. Sat in the mechanic's waiting room for 2 hours scrolling through headlines I didn't care about. For $130 later, she drove it like nothing happened. Didn't ask what was wrong with it. Didn't ask what it cost. The next morning, I came down to the kitchen. Mason and Ellie were eating cereal, both glued to their phones. I asked if someone could clear the dishes that had been sitting in the sink overnight. Mason didn't look up. He just muttered, "You're nobody here. Stop pretending like you're in charge." It didn't even sting. Not right away. That's the thing about slow death, your nerves go numb before the collapse. I turned to Rachel. She shrugged. They're teenagers. Don't take it personally. I should have snapped. Should have screamed. Flipped the table. Anything. But I didn't. I nodded once. Sat down. Ate my toast in silence. That night, I lay in bed next to a woman who shared everything with me except the truth. Her breathing was steady, soft, peaceful. Mine wasn't. I stared at the ceiling, counting the same water stains I'd promised to fix last fall. She'd kissed my best friend. She'd let her children spit on me. And I still paid the phone bill. That's when I knew it was time. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't write a letter. I didn't even tell her. I just got up at dawn the next morning and started shutting things down. Quietly, deliberately, without heat. I logged into the accounts. Cell phones, suspended. Car insurance, canceled. Hulu, Netflix, Spotify, Disney Plus, gone. Their usernames. Their passwords. All of it. I had set them up. I had managed the payments. I had the keys. So I turned the locks. The Wi-Fi went down by noon. The shared Amazon Prime account logged them out mid-purchase. School auto payments for field trips, lunch accounts, subscription tutoring services, all terminated. I went through each item like a surgeon, cutting only what I owned. No violence, just precision. It was a reversal, not revenge. Rachel came home that evening confused. Her phone wouldn't load emails. Ellie's car wouldn't start. The insurance hadn't processed her claim. Mason couldn't log into the college portal. The house was buzzing with low-grade panic. She walked into the garage, where I was sorting the tools. "Did something happen to the Wi-Fi?" she asked. I didn't look up. "I turned it off." She blinked. "Why?" I set the wrench down gently. "Because I'm done playing the part they wrote for me." She laughed, like I was joking, then stopped when I didn't laugh back. "Are you punishing them?" she asked, voice sharp. "No," I said. "I'm removing myself. That's all." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. But I hadn't changed. I had just stopped pretending. That night, there were no dinners, no questions. The house operated like a machine with a few gears missing. Rachel scrolled endlessly through her phone trying to reset passwords. The kids texted her from upstairs. "What's wrong with the Wi-Fi? Why's my debit card frozen?" They didn't ask me, because I was already gone in their eyes. They just hadn't realized I could make it literal. The next morning, Mason came downstairs red-faced. "My phone's off," he said, waving it in front of Rachel. "What the hell?" She looked at me. I sipped my coffee. "He's being a psycho," Mason growled. Rachel didn't correct him, didn't scold, didn't defend. Later, she pulled me aside, tried to reason, said the kids had college stuff coming up. Ellie had a big research assignment. Mason had deadlines. They needed access. They needed stability. Then they shouldn't have erased me, I said. She narrowed her eyes. "You're blowing everything up." "No," I said. "I just stopped holding it together." Her face went pale, because she knew it was true. She'd built her castle with bricks I carried, and I had just walked away from the wall. The days after that were chaos. Emails bounced. School called. Mason's college deadlines came and went. Ellie's streaming editions fell through. Their online calendars were blank. Their apps logged them out. They started knocking on my office door. Polite at first, then demanding, then silent again. They didn't know how to ask for help from someone they didn't respect. Rachel begged, not for forgiveness but for restoration. She said the kids were confused, that I had misread things, that I needed to be the bigger person. But I had been the bigger person for 14 years. And it hadn't gotten me anything but an unmade bed and a backhanded insult. Mason needed help reapplying to another school. I said no. Ellie's car insurance renewal bounced. She asked why. I said, "Ask your mom." Rachel cornered me one night in the kitchen, whispering furiously, "Why are you doing this?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "Because I finally listened." "To what?" she spat. "To your silence." The betrayal hadn't been the kiss. Or the lie. or the years of avoidance. It had been the stillness, the non-action, the quiet way she let it all happen. A week passed. The bills stacked up on the table, and I stopped opening them. I started keeping a bag in the trunk, my essentials, clothes, shaving kit, charger, cash. Every day, I left a little earlier for work, came home a little later. The house grew quieter. Not peaceful, just hollow. The first time Rachel cried, it wasn't for love. It was for control. For the man who used to catch every falling plate before it shattered. But I had stopped reaching. She asked me what she should tell the kids. I told her the truth. Tell them I used to be the man who did everything for them. And now I'm just the man they forgot. The night before I left, I walked through the house one last time, not to say goodbye, just to feel the emptiness I had built with my own two hands. The lights I had wired, the sink I had unclogged, the rooms I had painted, the bedroom where I had waited for love that never arrived. Mason was upstairs playing video games with his friends, on a hotspot. Ellie was scrolling through her phone, sighing loudly with every refresh. Rachel was in the kitchen staring at a bill with trembling hands. I opened the front door. No one noticed, so I stepped outside and pulled it shut behind me, not with a bang, not with a goodbye, just with the soft click of a man finally walking away from a script he didn't write. When a man disappears from a house but not from the world, he becomes a ghost of utility. I didn't vanish overnight. I withdrew like the tide, quiet, constant, relentless. I didn't block their numbers. That would have given them the drama they secretly craved. I just stopped replying. Rachel texted first, "Where are you?" Then, "Are you okay?" Then, "The Wi-Fi is still off. Can you at least fix that?" "No, I'm sorry. No, please come back." Just demands dressed up like concern. Mason's name lit up next. "Dude, WTF is going on with the car insurance?" Then Ellie, "My payment to college didn't go through. You need to fix it." Not a single please. Not even a hey. I sat on the edge of my motel bed, the kind of place with thin walls and vending machines that eat quarters, and read each message in silence. Let them pile up like unpaid bills. Because that's what they were. Debts called in after years of disrespect. Rachel called me 4 times in one day. I let them ring. Let them go to voicemail. That night, her voice cracked through the speaker. "You're punishing them for being kids." I didn't reply, because it wasn't punishment. It was reality. It was the sudden absence of scaffolding. They thought the world stood still on its own. They never looked beneath to see the man straining under its weight. And now he was gone. By the second week, Rachel missed a school meeting. I know because she left a frantic voicemail. They rescheduled Mason's advisor session. I didn't know. No one told me. There was blame in her voice, not panic. She was looking for someone to blame for the slack, for the silence. But the truth was simple. I had stopped holding up her world. Mason started calling at night. His voice was different now, forced calm, like someone trying to charm a landlord for one more month. "Hey man, I get it. I was out of line. I really need my tuition covered or I'm gonna get dropped from my classes." I listened to his voice. All I heard was someone who had never once called me dad, now calling me man like we were equals, like we'd built something mutual, like I hadn't carried him through adolescence with nothing but grit and quiet tolerance. I didn't reply. He followed up 2 days later. "You said respect had to be earned." "Fine. I get it. I'm earning it now. Can we talk?" But no. You don't earn respect when your back's against the wall. That's not respect. That's strategy. That's survival. Ellie tried next. Her message came at 2:13 a.m. "Please. I didn't mean it. I was just, I don't know, scared. Everyone hates their stepdad, right?" She said it like it was cultural. Like rejecting me was a phase, a meme, a TikTok challenge. As if I should understand because I had apparently signed up for the role of a disposable man. Rachel's messages changed tone by week 3. The panic sharpened. "Derek's gone," she said flatly. 3 words. No explanation. None needed. I knew. Of course I knew. He wasn't built for the fallout. He was built for stolen moments and shared hotel rooms. Not tuition bills. Not broken Wi-Fi or crying teenagers. He wanted Rachel when she was dressed up for work, not when she was begging the bank to waive a late fee. She didn't ask me to come back. She asked me to fix things. I didn't. I stayed gone. I watched from the edges. The mortgage payments were late. I still had access to the joint account, not because we were married, we weren't, but because she asked me to set everything up back then. She called it adulting delegation. Now the overdraft notices piled in like snow through a broken window. Ellie's job dropped her when she couldn't log into the company portal from home. Some stupid technicality. She called me, crying. I can't get back in. IT says the system can't verify my ID. Because the ID was tied to my email. Because I set it up. She begged. I listened, then hung up. Rachel came to my motel once. She waited in the lobby. I saw her from behind the curtain. She looked smaller, thinner, like guilt had weight. She stayed for 40 minutes. Never knocked. Then left. She emailed me later. Mason's school just sent a final notice. They're dropping him next week if we don't pay. I didn't open the attachment. Didn't even click. Instead, I replied with one sentence. He's your son, not mine. Her response was instant. You're heartless. And I finally answered her. It's the only way not to burn, because that's what I'd been doing. For years. Burning from the inside out. Swallowed by a house full of people who needed me until they didn't, and resented me when they did. There's a pain that comes from absence. And then there's the pain of presence being treated like absence. The second one scars deeper. When Mason was officially dropped from his university, Rachel left me a voicemail at 3 a.m. I hope you're happy, she said, her voice raw. But I wasn't. This wasn't about happiness. This was about truth. About consequence. They built a life on my back and then spat in my face. And now the roof was caving in. I moved out officially on a Thursday. No drama. No announcement. I hired a guy off Craigslist, cash in hand, to help me empty out the garage. My tools. My gear. My workbench. I didn't touch anything else. Not the furniture. Not the old photo albums. Let them rot. Let them sit there as relics of a life built on delusion. Rachel texted when she saw the garage. Are you really leaving for good? I didn't reply, because I had already left. Emotionally, spiritually, morally. The only thing I was taking now were the items that had my fingerprints. She tried again. They're kids. They didn't mean it. Can't you just come back? No, because it wasn't a single sentence that broke me. It was every small moment that led up to it. Every time she looked the other way. Every time Mason rolled his eyes. Every time Ellie smirked. Every time I opened my wallet and closed my mouth. The final blow wasn't the kiss. It wasn't the silence. It wasn't the "you're nobody here." The final blow was me, finally believing them. Believing I was nothing. So I stopped pretending to be everything. They thought I was the fallback plan. The man who'd always cave. Always cover. Always step in with a calm voice and a checkbook. But they miscalculated. Because once a man stops trying to be loved, he becomes something else. Untouchable. Free. And in that freedom I watched them crumble. Not gleefully. Not cruelly. Just as a man who knows what happens when a foundation cracks. And no one listens to the creak. A week after I moved, Rachel sent one last message. I told the kids. About Derek. About everything. Mason cried. Ellie hasn't spoken to me in 2 days. Then, you win. But it wasn't a game. It never was. It was a warning. A truth ignored. A debt paid in full. I didn't gloat. I didn't reply. I deleted the message. Because she still didn't understand. This wasn't about winning. It was about walking away from a war I never agreed to fight. I live near a lake now. Small town in Iowa. Quiet enough that the wind has its own voice. There's a bait shop down the road. A diner that still serves coffee in chipped mugs. And neighbors who wave without asking questions. My apartment faces the water. It's not big. One bedroom, small kitchen, a screened porch with a chair I picked out myself. That matters now, what I pick. The first morning I woke up here, I didn't check my phone. No buzzing alarms. No missed calls. No panic in someone else's voice. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the lake breathe. It moved like something alive. Something whole. There was no Rachel asking where the keys were. No Mason shouting from upstairs about a missing textbook. No Ellie crying over a dead Wi-Fi signal. Just water. Just wind. Just me. I eat when I'm hungry. I sleep when I'm tired. I don't explain where I'm going or why. I don't tiptoe around slammed doors or sudden moods. I don't walk into rooms where my presence drains the air. There's peace in being forgotten. Took me a while to stop checking the mail for their names. To stop wondering if Ellie got her job back, or if Mason figured out another way to pay for school. But each day the thoughts came less. Now they hardly come at all. Rachel texted again last week. I'm sorry. That's all it said. No punctuation. No follow-up. It was the first message in 2 months. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it stirred anything, but because it didn't. I didn't feel anger, or warmth, or grief. Just distance, like reading a line from someone else's novel. They all tried, eventually. Mason emailed me a month after I left. I shouldn't have said what I did. I was just angry. I didn't mean it. But meaning doesn't matter when the knife goes in. You can't uncut someone. Ellie wrote a letter. Handwritten. Pages of spiraling cursive and tear-stained apologies. She said she missed me. Said she didn't know how much I did until I was gone. That's the thing about absence, it teaches clarity. When the roof leaks, you remember the man who patched it in the rain. When the bills stack up, you remember the hand that paid them. But clarity isn't redemption. It's just light. And it came too late. I read her letter once, then burned it in a ceramic bowl on the porch. Watched the paper curl and vanish. She had every opportunity to know me when I was there. She chose silence. Rachel sent money. A check for $500. No note. It was supposed to mean something. A gesture. Token. But I mailed it back. Not out of spite, out of principle. You don't buy back dignity. You either give it when it's due, or you lose the man who kept showing up without it. Sometimes I think about sending a note. Just one line. I'm doing fine. But I don't. Because they already know that. I imagine them sitting in that house, the one I paid for. The one with the garden I dug out with my own hands. Where Rachel planted wildflowers and took credit when guests came by. I imagine the dead bulbs now. The weeds. The silence. Maybe they filled it with someone new. Another placeholder. Another man with good intentions and a wallet full of self-erasure. God help him. I wonder what version of me they tell themselves. The villain? The weakling? The martyr? It doesn't matter. They don't know me. Never did. They knew the services I provided. Not the man behind them. They knew hot dinners, full tanks, fresh clothes, working Wi-Fi, but not what it cost. Not what it burned out of me day after day. Because I never showed them. I bled in private. And now, in this silence, I've stopped bleeding. There's a woman I sometimes see at the diner. Elise. She reads the paper cover to cover, leaves generous tips, laughs too loud. She asked me once what brought me to town. Looking for quiet, I said. She smiled, but didn't ask more. That's rare. That's mercy. I don't tell her about Rachel, or the kids, or Derek, or Tina, or the night I stood behind the bar and watched 14 years collapse in a kiss. I don't tell her how I used to fold Ellie's laundry, or how I rewired the basement so Mason could have better lighting for his desk. That's not my story anymore. That's theirs. Mine is simpler now. I wake. I walk. Eat. I breathe. And nobody calls me nobody anymore. I was never looking for love, not really. I was looking for meaning, for weight, for acknowledgement. And in its place, I accepted utility. Labor dressed as belonging. But love without respect is slavery. And I was a slave for 14 years. I don't say that out loud, but I know it now. The hardest part isn't the betrayal. It's realizing how long you allowed it. How many moments you excused. How many doors you opened for people who never once thanked you for the house. But I forgave myself. Not them. Myself. For staying too long. For believing patience could replace pride. For thinking sacrifice was a currency that would eventually be returned. It wasn't. And that's okay. Because now, no one calls when something breaks. No one texts when a password resets. No one expects the man in the background to fix the foreground. I am not a father. I am not a husband. I am not the man behind the curtain. I am just Ethan. A man by a lake. A man with no debt left to pay. The phone still buzzes now and then. They still reach out, like hands groping in the dark. Not to say I miss you, but to say we miss what you did for us. But I don't respond, because I did not leave in anger. I left in truth, and truth is heavier than love. It doesn't need apologies. It doesn't need closure. It just needs distance. Sometimes I sit on the porch and think about writing it all down. Every moment, every sacrifice, every quiet insult, every empty birthday, every bruise disguised as a favor. But I don't. I just watch the lake. It doesn't ask for anything, doesn't take, doesn't forget. It just holds me gently in its reflection. So I ask you, whoever's still listening, was I wrong to walk away? Was I wrong to demand dignity? Would you have stayed? Would you have endured it? Or would you have done what I finally did? Stopped being the ghost and started being the man who left for good.